The Galactic Council wasn't designed to impress anyone. It wasn't a palace, it wasn't a monument. It was a machine built out of stone and gravity and cold purpose. A courtroom that had outlived empires. A place where civilizations didn't come to argue for attention. They came to argue for survival. The chamber was huge, circular, and heavy with silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that presses down on your chest and makes you remember every mistake you've ever made. The kind of silence that belongs to judges who don't need to raise their voice because their decisions echo across centuries. Above the council floor was a dome of living glass that didn't show stars, it showed law, symbols, records, a rotating ring of hundreds of worlds, each glowing like a quiet badge of legitimacy. If your planet was in that ring, it meant your species had earned a seat at the table. If it wasn't, it meant you were either too young, too dangerous, or already dead. And today, right in the middle of that ancient chamber, standing under the weight of 900 worlds watching with careful suspicion, there was something almost insulting in its simplicity. A wooden podium. Not polished metal, not alien crystal, not floating tech, just wood. Organic, old-fashioned, human. The council stared at it like it didn't belong here, like it was a joke someone forgot to explain. But the truth was simpler than that. Humans didn't bring the podium because they were primitive. Humans brought it because it meant something. It was a quiet reminder that life comes from living things, not from cold stone and paperwork. And then the human representative stepped forward. He wasn't tall, he wasn't armored, he didn't wear a crown or a cape or the kind of ceremonial clothing that screams power. He wore a plain black suit with a thin line of blue at the collar, simple enough that it almost looked disrespectful. But when he placed both hands on that podium, steady and calm, it felt like the entire room had just tightened. His name was Elias Wren, and the galaxy had labeled him a delegate, but that word didn't capture what he really was. He was Earth's voice. The High Arbiter sat above everyone else like a verdict waiting to happen. Kazori then didn't look old, but old didn't mean much in the Concord. Some species lived for centuries, some for millennia. Some existed as living networks instead of bodies. But Kazori wasn't feared because of age. Kazori was feared because of certainty. The Venerie believed law wasn't a story, it was a system, a set of rules, a machine that didn't care who cried when it worked exactly as designed. When Kazori spoke, the chamber didn't just hear it, the chamber obeyed it. "Proceed," the High Arbiter said. Elias lifted his head. He didn't look nervous, he didn't look excited. He looked like a man about to tell the truth in a room that hated truth unless it fit into a neat box. "The Galactic Council just got a humanity-sized headache," he said. That alone caused a ripple. Some delegates shifted, some hissed, some flared lights. The translation system struggled to soften the blunt tone, but couldn't hide the meaning behind it. Elias didn't apologize. "Our claim is simple. Universal rights don't come from an ancient cosmic decree." There were murmurs now, sharp, offended murmurs. He could feel it. Every species in that room had been raised under the same belief. The mandate was the foundation of peace. It was the reason the Concord didn't collapse into endless conquest. It wasn't just law, it was sacred tradition. But Elias looked directly into the center of the chamber and said the one thing that made the room feel colder. Universal rights come from life. The sound in the room didn't rise, it died. It collapsed into silence, the way fire goes quiet when oxygen vanishes.
And then Elias said the sentence that turned the council into a living storm. "And Earth is alive." The Concord had heard strange ideas before. Every civilization came with cultural baggage and myths and philosophical headaches. But this wasn't just strange, this was dangerous. Because the Concord's entire legal framework was built on classification, on categories, on neat labels: sapient, non-sapient, citizen, asset, threat, neutral. It wasn't built to handle a planet walking into court. A delegate from the Seereth Dominion spoke sharply, voice like dry metal scraping stone. "Incomplete? The mandate has held for 100,000 cycles. It is the spine of galactic stability." Elias nodded slowly, like he respected the confidence. "A spine is useful, but it doesn't tell you what pain is." The High Arbiter leaned forward just slightly, as if the movement itself was a warning. "Representative Wren, refrain from poetic deviation. This is a legal chamber." Elias smiled faintly. "Then let's speak like lawyers."
Behind him, a large floating screen of data appeared, Earth in full color, painfully alive compared to most worlds in the Concord's archives. Blue oceans, green continents, white storms curling like breath. "Our petition is not for special treatment. Our petition is for recognition." And then he delivered the core argument. "We claim Earth is a living planetary consciousness, and that this living world defines universal rights as life-centered, not category-centered." The council reacted instantly, not with agreement, with shock. "A planet can't be conscious," the Ledger World's delegate said. Their voice was precise, like numbers being read aloud. Elias didn't argue in circles. He simply replied, calm as steel. "That sentence is exactly what Earth is here to challenge." He brought up another image, a dead world far away, cracked and hollow like a skull left in space. "This was Karun," he said. Several delegates recognized the name. Karun was an extinct civilization, a warning in every history archive, an advanced society that followed the rules and still managed to destroy itself so completely that their planet became a tomb. The Karun were mandate compliant. They were legal, registered, recognized. He paused, then let the next words land with weight. "Then they destroyed their world." The screen zoomed in on the dead surface, on the scars where their final weapon had eaten through atmosphere and soil until nothing could breathe. "And when their world died," Elias said quietly, "so did their law." A watery-voiced delegate argued that this was irrelevant. The mandate governed sapient minds, not planets. A planet was a resource. Elias repeated the sentence slowly, like he was tasting poison. "A planet is a resource." Then he looked up. "That is exactly why we're here." The chamber temperature subtly recalibrated. The Concorde systems detected increased aggression and adjusted the air like a nervous parent trying to calm a room full of predators. Elias walked a few steps, careful and controlled, his shoes tapping lightly against ancient stone. He spoke like someone who had rehearsed the argument 1,000 times, but still felt the gravity of it. "Your law assumes rights are granted to individual minds," he said. "Yes," the arbiter replied. Elias nodded, "and that assumption is missing something." He gestured toward Earth again. "Earth isn't just a rock that life happened to grow on. It's a living system. It regulates itself. It adapts. It balances. Life on Earth evolved as layers, systems inside systems, every creature connected to another, every breath borrowed from something else." A delegate hissed, "You speak of ecosystems, not consciousness."
Elias looked at them, and instead of arguing, he asked a question. What is consciousness? For a moment, nobody answered, because consciousness wasn't just a scientific question in the Concord, it was a political weapon. Consciousness was the word that decided who deserved rights and who could be used. Elias spoke again, softer now. Earth doesn't think like we do. It doesn't speak sentences. It doesn't sit in seats or vote on mandates. He paused. But Earth speaks in balance. The data shifted into living patterns, breath of forests, flow of oceans, rise of oxygen, movement of life across the globe like one connected rhythm. Elias lifted his chin. Earth's position is this: rights don't originate from law. Law originates from life. The High Arbiter stared at him like a system watching a glitch spread. You're claiming the mandate is derived, not foundational. Yes, Elias replied, and you're claiming a civilization's rights come from its world. Elias held the Arbiter's gaze. Not just ours, he said, everyone's. That was the moment the council shifted from debate to fear. Because if Earth was right, then the Concord wasn't the source of rights at all. It was just paperwork written on top of something older.
A Voxian delegate rose, voice smooth and alarmed. You are attempting to destabilize universal jurisprudence. Elias didn't dodge the truth. Yes. The room stirred with tension. The Concord didn't fear battles as much as they feared legal collapse. They had survived wars. They had rules for war. What they didn't have rules for was uncertainty. Elias raised his voice, not shouting, but cutting through the air. You're afraid because this isn't just a petition, it's a mirror. He pointed toward the council. You built a galaxy where rights are a checklist. He pointed back to Earth. We built a world where rights are a relationship. That word, relationship, hit the room like a cold shock, because a relationship means responsibility. It means connection. It means you don't get to pretend your actions exist in a vacuum. Kizori leaned forward slightly. If Earth is alive, demonstrate it. Elias nodded. As you wish. He moved his hand, and the display behind him fragmented into hundreds of lights, swirling up into the dome, connecting to the council's ancient systems. The chamber's translation engines trembled, not from emotion, but from trying to process something outside their categories. The lights formed a waveform, a pulse, a rhythm that wasn't random, a rhythm that felt deliberate. This is Earth's biospheric signature, Elias said, recorded through centuries, measured through global patterns, magnetic shifts, atmospheric rhythm, biological synchronization. A delegate laughed. Patterns exist everywhere. Elias turned sharply. So does denial, he said, and denial isn't wisdom, it's fear. He caught himself, steadied his tone, then continued. The waveform became sound, not language, not words, a deep harmonic vibration that seemed to settle in the bones of every creature in the room, even the ones without bones. The chamber fell into a silence that wasn't legal. It was primal, because the sound felt like being watched, not by a person, but by something vast enough to hold oceans. That sound, Elias whispered, is Earth's coherence. He looked around the chamber as if addressing 900 civilizations at once. She's listening. The Concord's verification systems ran checks, cross-checks, fail-safes, integrity scans, every test built to detect fraud, every defense built from centuries of being lied to by ambitious species. Then the results appeared across the chamber's displays. The signature was real.
The pattern was persistent. The coherence wasn't accidental. A line appeared that the Council systems didn't even dare translate into certainty. Possible planetary cognition detected. The delegates reacted in waves: anger, disbelief, fear, awe. Some grew still, some shook, some emitted frantic signals that the translator softened into concern. Because if Earth was alive, then humanity wasn't alone. They were part of something bigger, a limb of a living world. Elias stood tall. "You classify planets as property," he said, "as resources, as neutral terrain." His voice sharpened. "Earth is not terrain." He paused, letting the weight of it land. "Earth is family." Kizori's voice cut in. "State Earth's definition of universal rights." Elias nodded. "Earth defines universal rights as life-centric. A being has rights not because it meets a checklist, but because it participates in the living continuum." A delegate snapped, offended. "Then you grant rights to bacteria." Elias didn't hesitate. "Yes, we do." The room shook with outrage. Elias raised his hand slightly, steadying the argument. "The difference isn't whether something deserves dignity. The difference is how much responsibility you carry towards it." He leaned forward, voice strong. "Your mandate teaches entitlement." He straightened. "Earth teaches stewardship." Kizori's eyes narrowed. "You propose an impossible framework. You would collapse civilizations under guilt." Elias shook his head. "You confuse responsibility with guilt. That's your failure, not ours." Then Elias stopped. He looked down for a moment, like he wasn't sure the next words would survive the room. And when he spoke again, his voice wasn't diplomatic anymore. It was honest. "We almost killed her." The chamber froze. Elias swallowed. "We poisoned our oceans, choked our air, burned our forests, destroyed life, and called it progress." His eyes lifted again. "And Earth didn't punish us like a god." He exhaled. "Earth warned us." The waveform above pulsed softly, like a heartbeat heard through a wall. "And we finally listened." A delegate hissed. "You romanticize planetary physics." Elias snapped his gaze toward them. "No, I'm describing a relationship your civilization has never had." He turned back to the High Arbiter. "We learned something the mandate never taught. That rights aren't just what you're owed, they're what you protect." Kizori's voice remained calm. "Your claim would fracture the Concord. If rights come from planetary consciousness, then law loses universality." Elias nodded. "It does." "And then every world becomes its own law?" Kizori said. Elias replied quietly. "Not every world." He pointed toward Earth's pulse. "Only the ones that are alive." The room went still again. Kizori leaned forward. "And if some worlds are alive and others are not?" Elias answered instantly. "Then rights aren't universal the way you've been pretending they are. They're universal the way life is universal. Real, beautiful, but not guaranteed, not evenly distributed." A Cyrif delegate rose angrily. "That invites conquest. If some planets are sacred and others aren't, your argument becomes a weapon." Elias didn't flinch. He just stared back. "Your mandate already made planets disposable," he said. "You just covered it in polite words." Then he spoke louder, cutting through the chamber like a blade through cloth. "We're not creating a new danger. We're revealing the one you've been living with." Kizori's gaze locked onto him. "What does Earth want?" Elias answered, "Recognition of planetary consciousness as a legal participant." Silence. "You want a planet to testify," Kizori said. "Yes," Elias replied. "And how does a planet speak to law?" the Arbiter asked. Elias's voice softened. through us. He touched his chest lightly. Humanity is Earth's nervous system, her hands, her voice. He paused, and the moment we leave her behind, we stop being human. Kizori's voice lowered. That is religion. Elias shook his head. No, it's responsibility with consequences. The dome above dimmed fully. That was the signal. Debate was over. Decision time had begun. Kizori rose, and the Concorde fell silent, like a predator holding its breath. This council has 3 options, Kizori said. Reject Earth's petition and classify planetary consciousness as non-participant. Accept Earth's claim and amend the mandate, recognizing living worlds as legal entities. Or delay judgment and establish a commission, risking instability through uncertainty. The air became heavy. The galaxy itself felt like it was leaning in to listen. Elias stood still, not begging, not threatening, not pleading for mercy. He was simply present, like a species that had survived storms long enough to stop fearing rain. Kizori looked at him. If Earth is correct, what happens when emerging civilizations claim their planet speak too? Elias answered softly, then you'll have to learn to listen. And if a planet's rights conflict with the people's rights, Kizori asked. Elias's eyes darkened. Then you'll finally understand what we've been wrestling with since we learned how to build cities. Rights aren't clean. They're a negotiation between survival and morality. Kizori turned toward the council. You have heard Earth's petition. You have seen evidence. The implications are catastrophic. And then the words came out, slow and heavy, like a confession carved into stone. If Earth is correct, then the Concorde has treated living worlds as resources. And if Earth is wrong, then Earth has attempted to corrupt universal law with myth. Kizori paused. Their gaze flickered in something close to doubt. The Concorde is not built for emotional morality, they said, but perhaps it has grown too comfortable inside its own machine.